Hello everyone, I want to show you guys this poleaxe head that I made. It's got the hammer style in the front, and then it's got the flat edge. Great for like trapping, right? Opposing weapons. I mean, I think that's the primary reason why you would want this flat edge. Or if you hook here, like picture if you have a gauntlet on and you hook somebody like this, I mean, they're not getting out. I mean, even with my hand right here, it's really hard. Like that really grabs the hand. Okay, so this is an excellent hook for pulling somebody in. Okay, so I think that's why this design was developed, right? And then you got the hammer back here. The way this was formed is basically this was basically straight, and what I did is I split it down the middle. You know, I split it and then I hammered it flat. I did a video on how I did this. Now, I made this specifically for somebody that wanted it not mounted, right? They want to mount it themselves. The reason why they do want to also do that is they're planning to do some additional decorative work on this. So it's easier for them to do it if it's not mounted on the shaft. They also wanted the butt spike. So you can see the butt spike there. It's also a lot cheaper to ship it like this, because if I try to ship something that's complete like this in like a 7 to 8 foot box, it ends up being somewhere between $60 and $100 depending on where it's going. Whereas if I just send the head like this, it's a lot cheaper to ship it. So this is a really cool design. You know, I've been wanting to kind of copy this historical design for a while. Now, I was kind of jealous of this after I made it. Like I made it for somebody else, and I ended up making another one here for myself. Okay, then I can. It's almost impossible for me to make two that are exactly identical, because when I'm hammering on the anvil, like over thousands of blows, the hammer never hits the workpiece the same way over thousands of blows. So there's always a variation. Now on this one over here, I put the pronged hammer design. I personally like this design better versus the flat hammer, which I have on this one over here. I also made a flat hammer on this one. It's a little bit different, but same design. And on this one, I gave it a little bit more of a curved axe blade. Now this is not cut over here. So one of the things I need to do is I need to cut this so that the two pieces fit together. So the way the poleaxe is designed, basically I cut it in. Let me get behind the camera. See how I cut it? So the two pieces basically lock into place. Okay. Now the rivet that I put through it is basically a backup, or it's kind of like to hold it together while somebody kind of works on it. So it's good for the rivet to be there. I've done poleaxe in the past where I didn't use the rivet, and I've come around to actually I like using the rivet. Now sometimes this will take the form of a side spike, right? Because in some of these poleaxes you'll see that there's spikes that stick out of the side here. That's actually a fastener, right? What they do is they put the pin through, and then they thread the pin, and then they drill out the holes in the spikes, and they thread them on. I was actually experimenting with that. That's what I did here. So that was the pin that was going to go through it, and this was eventually going to become a side spike. I was just basically going to hammer this down to a point, right? And you can see the hole in there. See if I can hit the camera. Now, if you look in there, you see how the pin actually snapped in place. Okay, that's why you don't see the hole. What you're seeing is the pin that actually broke. So, because I put it on and took it off a couple times in the testing process, and I also I made a few of these, and I was like also hitting them. And what I found is that this is a very vulnerable area. Okay, even though this is a 1/4 inch steel pin, when you have something like this sticking out so much like this and it's getting hit, it wants to break. Okay, so even though side spikes are very historical, I just through my testing, I don't think it's a good idea, because first of all it's a fastener, So you don't want to hit somebody with the fastener, with the thing that's kind of holding it together. And if you hit it enough times, it's going to break. So I think that just putting a pin through it, like I did with this one over here, that's a much better idea. And as you can see over here, again, it's fitted together, so the pin isn't even necessary. But it's basically like a backup. Now, with the poleaxe, as you can see, it's two separate parts that are fitted together versus a halberd. With the halberd, which I have over here, this originally started off as two pieces, actually 3 pieces, because you had actually 4 or 5 pieces, because you've got the sockets over here on the side. This was 2 separate pieces, right? You got the top spike, and then you got the axe blade here and the back, and these are all separate pieces. And the socket basically sandwiches everything together, and then it's forge welded in place. Okay, so this is a good design when you want to go light and cheap, all right? Because it's a lot easier, it's a lot faster to like forge weld these pieces together rather than try to fit them together. And with the halberd, see, the halberd typically, when you stand here, it comes up to your arm almost. Okay, so it's like somewhere between 7 and 7.5 foot. The poleaxe is usually about 6 foot. So the poleaxe was designed for guys in armor to fight each other on foot. The halberd, on the other hand, was designed so that common people can hook knights off of horses, pull them to the ground, and then stick them with a spike in the gaps. Okay, so if you're pulling people off horses, reach is really important. So that's why this thing is almost 7.5 feet tall. And essentially, this is a spear with hooks, right? So the hooking part here is the most important part of this, right? The hooking part, and then the pointy part here. And also this part here is really good for trapping. Like if you got pike formations fighting, you can basically trap an opposing pike in this section here, hold it to the ground while your buddy basically stabs the guy with his own pike. Okay, so because this is taller, right, this head needs to be thinner, right? Because if it's not thinner, if it's not lighter, you're not going to be able to have it on a 7.5 foot shaft and be able to, to maneuver it, and cut and recover. So the weight of that head is basically going to determine how long this can be. Okay? So with the poleaxe, since we're fighting other guys in armor, the hammer is particularly useful because, like, how do you defeat somebody that's in full plate armor? Like, ultimately, this spike needs to go into a gap, but how do you create that opportunity? Basically, you hit them on the side of the head with the hammer, which is going to concuss them, get them on the ground, and that's when you drive either, this spike, well, actually, this one doesn't have a butt spike. Sometimes they'll have a butt spike. This has an end cap for smashing. But if you can concuss them, get them on the ground using the hammer, then you can use this spike to stab them in the gaps. The back spike over here, a lot of times people think that it's for penetrating armor. I've tried it, like even with much sharper ones than this. It's really not good at penetrating armor. And what happens is when it does penetrate, because this gets wider, like even if it penetrates at, let's say, a 1/2 inch, it generally stops when you penetrate armor. It doesn't like keep going all the way in. And it takes a lot of effort, and you also tend to get your weapon stuck in whatever you penetrate. So I think this is a lot better for hooking. If you want to pull somebody like behind the knee or something, or behind the neck, this is really useful for hooking people. And yeah, I mean, obviously, if you can hit them in a gap, like let's say in the elbow, that will also work too. But the primary thing here is the hammer for concussing somebody, and the spike for then stabbing them in the gaps. Now, because this has a hammer, right, and because we're basically hammering with this, the construction of this has to be a lot stronger. Okay, so this is a lot thicker in this area right here versus the halberd. Okay, this is much thinner material. Okay, so that's why it's socketed. Okay, because what's happening here is, because this is a thinner metal, by wrapping it around the wood like this, we're kind of spreading out the stress, right? And the same thing, the haft comes basically about halfway up. So again, we're spreading out the stress. So because it's a thinner metal, see the blade is very thin on this, right? That's very, like if we look at historical halberds, you have very thin blades. It's not like a chopping axe, okay? This is primarily a hook, okay, that has a chopping capability, right? But that's not what it's going to excel at, okay? Same thing here. This is for hooking people off of horses. So you got a lot of ways to hook people with this. And if you look at the top spike here, this is also a lot thinner, right? So because this is a lot thinner, it can be longer, right? So the thinner it is, the longer it can get. However, if you're striking, like even though this is a diamond section here that's about a ½ inch thick, if you strike with this enough times, it will start taking a bend. And some of the historical ones that I've looked at up close, you will see that they have bends in them. Okay, so with the poleaxe, since with this we're doing a lot more striking, the top spike tends to be thicker, right? So it's like almost like 3/4 of an inch, right? So it tends to be thicker and shorter, so that when it hits, it's less likely to take that bend. And with this, what I do is when I heat treat this, I just heat treat the tip. I don't heat treat this section here, because if it gets overly stressed, I don't want it to break. I would rather it actually take a slight bend, because then I can just heat it up and make it straight again. But if I harden the whole spike and then it gets stressed, it would probably break in this area over here, which, as you can see, I have this is like this is a really thick part over here. And because everything has a breaking point, so if I overly stress this and it broke, basically the top spike is useless. I'd have to make another one. Okay, but if it takes a slight bend, I can unbend that. I can just heat it up and rebend it, and you know, that will take a lot less effort. Okay, so yeah, so I wanted to show you guys this poleaxe that I made, and talk to you guys a little bit about how these things are used, right? And same thing with the poleaxe here. It's because the head here is thicker, it has to be shorter, but it has to be short enough so I can swing this and recover. Okay, if I made this longer, I wouldn't be able to comfortably do that. The way I designed it, basically, I have full-length langets that run all the way down and makes this thing like really, really strong. Okay, and also the way I designed it, the side langets here come all the way to the edge. Okay, so that's an 1/8 of an inch on each side. So basically, I got an 1/8 of an inch of total steel here on the sides. So this is a very solid hitting surface over here. Okay. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that video. I primarily wanted to show you this new design that I made for somebody with the flat edge. This was actually the first time I made a flat edge. Usually I had given them a curve, or some type of an axe side, but it was a fun design. You can see how much metal is in here, and there has to be a lot of metal, because basically I need to cut this so that it will accept the top spike, right? Because the legs come down, and that's what locks it in place. So there has to be enough metal in there so that this can be used percussively and not break. And that's not how a halberd is worked. With the halberd, I mean, yeah, we're occasionally chopping with this, but we're primarily hooking and thrusting with this. Anyway, drop some comments. Let me know what you guys think. Talk to you soon. An interesting note, when we look at historical halberds, they never have a hammer. Okay, they usually have a hook on the back. When we look at poleaxes, sometimes they'll have a back spike like this. Sometimes they'll have a hammer. Sometimes they'll have a blade. So sometimes poleaxes don't have a hammer, right? They have a blade and a back spike. But with halberds, we never see a hammer. So and the reason is because with the hammer, Hammers for hammering, for hitting things really, really hard, okay? And the thinner construction of the halberd is not suitable for hitting things really, really hard, okay? But the construction of the poleaxe is, so that's why it can have a hammer.